Vinny with Court TV got the tea straight from the source on the beatdown that Scott Peterson received recently. We're going to talk about it in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Psh, there's a sofa somewhere in there. Psh, there's a Paul right here. My name is Paul. If you're new to the channel, if you're not new to the channel, well, guess what? My name's still Paul. Now, today we're going to be doing kind of a quick video. It's kind of a quick update, kind of an update on Scott Peterson. Scott Peterson is the man who took the life of Lacey Peterson, his late wife, obviously, and their son, Connor. He was unborn at the time. He, went to death row. He got that overturned, and now he's in general population, and it is proving to not be working out that great for him. So what we're going to do is we are going to watch clips from Vinny from Court TV where he is interviewing the other inmate who gave Scott the beatdown. Okay. One of the things that I'm always curious about when you see these situations like this where somebody gets like a death penalty overturned and they were in prison for something like, doing things to kids or women and things like that, like vulnerable, innocent populations, and they get put into general population. I'm like, why would you want that, right? Like, this is going to probably be worse for you. Case in point, Scott Peterson. That's what we're going to do. We're going to listen to the clips and talk about it along the way. So Vinny would take a phone call with this inmate who got a hold of Scott Peterson. Now on the call as well was the inmate's girlfriend. Now he will go into great detail about like why he did it and how it played out and the aftershock of it. His name is Charles Miles. His girlfriend is Tess Morado. And again, they spoke with Vinny. Now let's take a look at a few of the highlights. So apparently, just to set the scene here before we get into it, Scott's like on the yard playing pickleball, okay, with the boys, okay. Now, this is when the incident occurs. Charles wanted to make sure that Vinny knew that he wasn't out there playing that pickleball. Okay, Charles says that he was arguing with the cops about something with his tablet, and he was going back and forth with that or whatever. Now, he says that Scott was like 20 or 30 feet away, and that after this interaction that Charles has with the cops, him and his cellmate are like walking away. And the cellmate's like, hey boy, look, there's that baby unaliver. And then Charles is like, what, huh? What are you talking about? And he's pointing over to pickleball court where Scott is playing with somebody or whatever. Now, Charles will say that at first he's like, I didn't know that was Scott Peterson. Let's listen to what he says about it.
And he had like sunglasses on. And like he felt like he looks really dark, like he's been in the sun a lot or something. So like, I'm kind of looking for this light skinned, like, clean cut dude that, that everybody's seen on court,
right,
from like the pictures or whatever, right? He didn't look like that at all. He looked like Mexican dude that's been in the sun a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's got a ponytail now. Doesn't he have a ponytail or a man bun?
No, he cut that off. He doesn't have that either.
Oh, okay, he cut that. Gotcha.
Now, I will have to say, I do want to give a thank you to Scott for cutting the man bun off. Honestly, it literally upset me in a way that it shouldn't, and that speaks more about me than it does anything else, okay? The man bun really upset me. I don't know why, but it just brought up like a very negative feeling in me, okay? So we are thankful for that. Now, I would say this too. One thing, like, we're used to seeing these pictures of Scott when he's younger. And so, like, seeing him now, like, in court and stuff like that, he had the man bun. He looked like, honestly, he looked appropriate for his age, but like he stayed in shape along the way. Like he didn't like get big and huge or whatever. He looked thinner in the face than he did when he was like on the outs, right? Which was kind of surprising to me. And continuing on, Charles will say that he wasn't really sure like who it was at first, and then he'll go into like, Charles does this, like how he used to run with the gangs in prison, and how they don't like people like Scott who do the things that Scott did. Now Charles would say as a kid that he used to play on the very place that baby Connor and Lacey's body were ultimately found. Charles even said that he recently dealt with another offender like Scott, like on another yard. Now Charles would also say that something happened and it was like a sign from God about this interaction with Scott. Let's hear what he has to say.
What's really interesting about this is actually the night before, is I was alone and walking back from Pill Line. I felt the need to pray about, to God about many wrongs that I have done. and that I have always had good intentions, whether it was to feed myself or my family or avenge terrible things done to children by men in here who have committed some of the worst crimes imaginable. So much that it hurts my heart and soul when I'm around or near them. So many fake people in here talk about this and that, saying, oh, someone should do something about this or that, but hardly anyone ever does. I recently got into a lot of trouble beating up child molesters and their kind on other yards, prisons, etc. I know I have to stay out of trouble in order to get out of here.
Right.
I've been in the hole. I've lost property. I've lost privileges, money, and so many struggles lately.
He's out there doing God's work, right? I mean, that's basically what I get from him saying this. Now, one thing in this is Charles talks a lot. Like, he'll go down the rabbit hole, okay? So him talking about this and whatnot, and again, like, all of us who follow true crime, we see this, like, we hear it, especially if you follow, like, Prison Talk, where they talk about people like Scott Peterson and how they fare in prison. And so I get what he's saying. Now, we'll get to the part in a minute where he's like, I gotta be good to get out of here. Because for whatever reason, in my mind, number one, at the very beginning, even though I heard the beginning of this video with Vinny, like the unedited version that you're not watching here, you can see it on Court TV. You hear this is a call from an inmate, like that kind of thing, right? For whatever reason in my mind, I thought that he was on the outside calling in. I don't know why. So I went through like half the interview until I was reminded again, like, oh wait, no, he's calling for prison. But then also, I was just like, oh, this guy's like, only in for a couple of years or whatever. This is just how my ADD mind works, okay? So we'll get to all of that here in a minute at the end when they talk about like the ramifications of this. So once Vinny gets Charles back on track, things seem to escalate very quickly between Scott and Charles on the yard. Let's hear it.
So when I turned around, because I was looking back and forth, like with the cops, like I was telling my cellie about the issue. Okay, all I did was I turned around when my cellie said that, and I literally seen this guy running towards us with the paddle in his hand, right? And he was aggressively running towards us, and it looked like he was just gonna run right into me. I said, "Hey, stop! Excuse me," you know what I mean? And he's like, "Hey, I'm getting the ball or whatever," and I said, "Stop!" He did not stop. He tried to just literally run right through me or something to go get the ball, and at which time I just went in attack mode. I just started swinging at him,
I've got my little gerbil fight going on over here, right? So, yeah, reading between the lines is the vibe that I get. He's kind of having to, like, come up with a way of, like, Scott was the aggressor and to keep things on track, right? So I get it. For whatever reason, just the visuals that I get of Scott, like, running up on this dude with a pickleball paddle, I can't with that, right? It's just almost comical to me. That's the interaction. They go at it, right? Now, Charles will say that he wasn't even 100% sure it was really Scott during all this until they were like cuffed up on the ground. Now, Charles will also say that he gave Scott a real good beatdown. Then Vinny will go in for one of the hard-hitting questions that we're all curious about.
Yeah, like he was trying to like wrestle me. He actually tried to throw me on the ground. So like I had to, we were struggling on the ground. Like it was either like him getting on top of me or me getting on top of him. So I had to get on top of him. Somehow I was able to overpower him. I got on top of him, and I just started punching him out, kind of like a UFC fight, like where they're on top of the guy. You know what I mean? Like pounded on top of him.
Was he trying to get you with the paddle? Was he trying to hit you with the paddle?
Was he trying to hit you with the paddle? I don't know what the hell happened to the paddle. Like I think when I first punched him, I don't know what happened to the paddle. I think he may have dropped it or something.
Imagine if Scott was like beating him up with paddle. Speaking of, complete side note, okay, so he talked about that UFC. Have y'all seen the things now where they do the power slap competitions? I am hooked on those, and I don't know why. I'm usually not the kind of person that wants to watch people do that. But for whatever reason, and whenever I scroll by that on TikTok, I can't stop looking at it, okay? It's so fascinating to me. So maybe Scott was trying to give him the power slap with the paddle. Now, Charles will say that Scott made the first physical contact with him, and he's like, well, who did what first or whatever? And he's like, oh, no, that was Scott. Okay, that was Scott. I'm trying to get up out of here. I'm not trying to lose my honey bun money, okay? And he's like, look, he made it first by like basically coming into my personal space. He wasn't stopping. He was just running up in me and not running up at me, but like running up in my space, right? Okay, let's get that straight there. Okay, so Charles will say that, look, there was this dude with Scott, I guess maybe his pickleball partner or something, that when this is going down, this dude's like talking all this, what to everyone there, not to Scott, but like, protecting Scott or whatever. And then when the cops come over and start breaking it up, this dude's telling the cops, they're like, yeah, you know, beat Charles down, hit him with the little baton thing or whatever, like egging him on to do all this and like come after Charles even more.
You know, he even encouraged the police to hit me with the baton. The police hit me with the baton twice, and he was telling them to hit me again and again. I heard my cellmate saying something like, you know, fool, don't worry about him. Like, if something happens, you know, like, basically, like, my cellie made it. I could hear my cellie in the background, like, letting it be known, like, you know, like, it's one-on-one, you know?
It's one-on-one. Don't be getting all up in this. One thing I'm very curious to hear from people is if you have any tea on this, because there's something that sounds very off about this, and I think that he will answer it for us in a second, but it's almost like the power that Scott has, because I'm just like, is this how people like Scott survive in yards like this? And you'll see where I'm going with this in just a second, because you heard him right here where he's like, you know, Scott has a friend there hanging out with him. They're in general population. They're on the thing. You know, so I'm just like, huh. Now, one thing also that I'm curious about is, and I don't know if this specific person operates this way, but this dude will say that he used to mess with gangs and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't do that anymore. So it makes me wonder, are they in general population, but then some kind of protective version of that? Because like, how well would this go over for this dude if he was like former gang? Like, I don't know how that works, right? It could be different from place to place, whatever. So Charles said that Scott bit him on the hand during the interaction. Now, the drama doesn't end there though. It gets actually even better, right? So Scott and Charles are, of course, they're cuffed up, they're caged up, and they're basically like right next to each other. Charles's girlfriend would chime in and be like, well, yeah, look, they caged these guys up and they're like right next to each other. If you see these prison shows, like when these dudes like do that, the cops don't care. They're going to separate you, but you might be right next door to your dude, like whoever you just went at it with, right? Now, what will end up happening, she says, as well as Charles, is that they will end up talking for hours, okay? And Charles will say that he basically told Scott, like, the issues of that day, like, look, this is what's going on with my tablet, you know, and I'm trying to get out of here, and I have an issue with people who do stuff like what you did, you know, and that's why we're at where we're at. This is what he will say Scott had to say about that.
He tried to convince me that he didn't do it, and I told him that I knew the evidence that they used to convict him, right, was kind of like, it was kind of cheesy, right? Like, they try to say that, you know, they picked up on a dog scent and all that. Like, the dog picked up the scent at the pier, basically, and that was pretty much kind of like the only evidence that they actually had.
Well, they also had his wife's hair was in his boat, and he told everyone.
I didn't know all that.
Yeah, his alibi was being in San Francisco Bay. He said he went fishing on Christmas Eve on San Francisco Bay, which is nowhere near where he was living. He was living out in Modesto. Why would you go all the way to San Francisco Bay in a little tiny boat to go fishing? And then exactly where he said he went fishing is where, you know, Lacey and Connor were found. He put himself at the scene of the crime.
One thing.
Thank you, Vinny. Good Lord, send him a mug, somebody, Lord, something. He's so nice. I met him at CrimeCon very, like, in passing or whatever. Yeah, he's such a nice guy. He's so fun, right? Just like, you know, hey, what's going on? You know, that kind of a guy. Anyways, so this is what I'm talking about, where I'm just like, okay, what's up with this? Because this dude's in here saying, well, I'm talking to Scott, and he's like telling me, of course Scott's going to lie about it. Scott's claiming he's innocent, right? But this dude seems to have just kind of believed it. And then Vinny's like, no. Now, this guy's been locked up for a while, right? So it's like a testament to, I don't really know. I also do think it's very interesting that by being able to sit and talk, as opposed to just like be physical, he was able to like hear enough out of Scott to be like, oh, okay, well, whatever. But again, we're going to get to some of the reasoning why this dude might have been like conditioning to be like, well, look, you know, we're going to be cool when we get out of here. Now, Charles will go on to say that Scott basically will agree with like whatever you say, and that he just seems to be a very big manipulator, which, I mean, hello, we kind of knew this ourselves.
Pretty much trying to minimize like what he did or what, you know, what was going on at the time. He just said that, you know, he was a dick, that he cheated on his wife, and he told me that basically that the family believes him now, and, you know, like he's got this chance to go on with the Innocence Project and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't know that Lacey's family was actually supporting this.
No, Lacey's family is not supporting him.
Now, this is the thing I was also wondering about this part. So Vinny's giving him the tea, like, okay, so remember this dude's still locked up. So Vinny's like, no, he didn't do this, or they got a hair here. He didn't, but. So what happens now when this dude takes this info back? Do people on the inside, they can be like, no, don't believe this dude. I do think that Scott is probably very charismatic. Obviously, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, he was able to sit here and do this, do that, but it's just, it's weird to me. So anyways, Charles will then say that on a certain level, Scott seems to have the upper hand. So let's hear what he has to say about that, and then we'll continue forth.
Yes, we actually, well, the next day, you know, I told him, like, look, man, you know, he's got all the money in the world in here, so people are willing to do anything for money. So I realized, you know, like, the predicament I'm in. He could easily just pay a bunch of inmates to try to get on me.
Right.
So, you know, I kind of figured, yeah, and my girlfriend, this is one of the closest prisons to my girlfriend, and she comes to visit me. She lives about an hour and 10 minutes away. So I just don't want to lose that opportunity to visit with my girlfriend. So I figured the best thing that I could do is kind of just squash the issue and let him know that there's no big deal. So I told him, you know, when we come out the cages, look, we're just going to shake hands, whatever, you know, and we'll just, you know, be good, you know. So we signed the chrono to be on the yard together. And I actually went to the education that he works in. He works in the educational building.
This whole thing right here, and again, if you know, especially if you've done time situation that you want to share, let me know. Don't put yourself out there, though, of course, if you don't want to. So when he's talking about Scott has all the money in the world in here, well, you know he's getting that honey bun money, okay, from multiple people, men, women. You know he's got a fan club, okay? Sad to say, but just from all walks of life. So I'm sure he is getting paid on the books, right? So when he's like, you know, he might pay people to do all sorts of things to me. This is my question. Is somebody who has charges like Scott Peterson, who somehow end up in some form of general population, even if these like messed up charges, let's use Stephen Stearns, for example. Could Stephen Stearns buy protection in prison? Or is it like, ain't nobody protecting that, right? Like, or in the hierarchy, is it like a different level of like what Stephen did to Matt allegedly on that, right? Hasn't been convicted as the time I'm recording this. You know, allegedly what Stephen did to Madeline is worse than what Scott did to Lacey and Connor, right? Now, I'm not saying that, but I'm like, is there a hierarchy there? Like, if Stephen had all the honey bun money in the world, and I mean, I'm being dramatic when I say honey bun money, there's oftentimes, you know, people getting paid in the outside and transfer money, whatever. But is it like they can buy their safety, or is it like, no? You know, because it does seem that Scott, this dude seems to think Scott could come after me. And this dude's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to get home. You hear he's got this girlfriend. She's on the phone. I don't know if I pulled any clips with it. You can listen to the whole thing, like I said, on Court TV and hear the whole conversation. He does go on a lot. It's interesting what he has to say. But I just pulled out the pieces I want to comment on. You know, he's got this girlfriend. She's got 2 kids. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to, you know, whatever. So also, at the end of that, he's like, Scott works in the education department. So I'm just like, so he's like, got a job? Like, that's just what baffles me, because in my mind, I figure people like Scott, it's instantly handled. Now, I understand when you're on death row, you're a little bit more isolated, but in general population, I'm just very surprised that nothing's happened to him, that he even has like a little job somewhere. And that's why I'm curious if he's in some form of, for lack of a better term, a soft prison, or, you know what I'm saying, like something like that. If you know, let me know, but let's keep going. Now, look, Charles was saying the issue of seeing Scott and dealing with him, he's like, yeah, you know, I'm in that education thing, doing some classes, whatever. I see him like once a week. We don't have any problems. It's squashed, okay? Now then Charles will go on. Remember I said earlier how I was like, well, I thought he was in there like for maybe, you know, just a couple of years, something like that. Oh no. Okay, Charles said that he originally got a 68 to life sentence, okay, for a gang-related unaliving originally. And he's like, I actually could get a chance to go home now with some changes in the legal system and all that kind of stuff. So let's hear what he has to say, and then we'll reconvene on the sofa.
I didn't really think I ever had a chance to go home until recently, when they started doing youth parole, which lowers pretty much crimes of anybody that committed it under 25 to like,
Right.
you know, under the age of 25. Basically, everybody has a 25 to life sentence, you know, so if you start eligibility after 20 years, you know, you do 80% of your sentence. So that kind of like.
So how much time have you served so far?
I've already done 18 years.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll be
All
eligible
right.
for parole
So-
in 2 years.
So don't do what you did to Scott Peterson to anyone else.
No, what's interesting is his girlfriend will basically, in a very low-key way, be like, yeah, he gave him a beat down. He deserved the beat down, right? And I was like, yes, girl, thank you. Again, a lot of people want to thank this dude right here, okay? Period, end of story. Now, I don't know this dude's particular charges, so I'm not really speaking to him on this level. But when you see these, like, prison justice things and things of this nature, I oftentimes will think that the person inflicting it is somebody who they're not ever going home. You know, they got multiple life sentences, whatever. I would hate to see somebody, especially with a short sentence, right? Like, say you rolled up in there with a few years, messing your life up, like Vinny said, over somebody like Scott Peterson or even Stebbins or whatever, right? It's like, don't let them do that. But I mean, you know, I get, you know, prison justice is a thing, okay? And so hats off to you, because oftentimes what we see is these dudes, and I'm talking Stephen Stearns, Chris Watts, Scott Peterson, you know, they're going away and their life still goes on, right? And oftentimes they're still in some way victimizing family members, you know, and that could just be like dragging them through the process doing this. And it almost kind of feels like, well, really, they're rolled up in here with a little iPad talking about Honey Bun Days Friday, and, you know, they're pulling their kid's body off the beach? What? No. You know what I mean? And so then somebody like Mr., you know, Charles comes along and kind of does what everybody wants to have happen. You know, think case in point, Jeffrey Dahmer. You know, he's in prison making fun and jokes about the way he killed all these innocent people. You know that wasn't going to last. So, that being said, you know, I'm very curious to know if anybody like has tea on that level of like, how does this part work? Okay, because it does sound like Charles is like, like this dude could be paying off to have something done to me. And I'm like, does Scott Peterson really have that kind of pull? And is that why, like, one person that shocks me that we have not seen something happen to him is Chris Watts. Okay, how I get he might be in protective custody, but even on that, I don't care. Okay, when you have charges that are as horrifying as some of these dudes, even if you're in protective custody, I'm like, how are they living this long? Right? The fact that Chris Watts, nobody's gotten to him. I mean, that went international, okay? It really surprises me, but I never considered the part where these dudes could be like paying people off with the honey buns or whatever, you know, maybe other kind of favors, okay? We don't know. And that's how they survive, and maybe that's what you gotta do what you gotta do, okay? I don't know. But I thought it was really cool to hear this dude's perspective, like him just get up here and be like, this is what happened, okay? Like, this is kind of tea I'm here for, right? I love this stuff. I hate to say it, but I do. I just absolutely do. I saw this video come up. I was like, take my money, click so fast, right? So anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section. If you're still watching, I do appreciate it. If you could drop some little sofas off, you know, somewhere back there in the living room for myself, Rosco, and Spirit, Bo, and Lou. Rest of the Sofa Squad, too. Good Lord, we need a place to sit. Hang out in the comment section. And until we all meander our own way down there and hang out in that comment section, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.